Okay, Seder. Right, so we're up to Siman Yudalev Halacha Ches. Two very interesting seifim today. So Sif Ches, Hamishtachave lebehema. A person bows down to an animal. Tzmara posel tzitzis. The wool on that animal is posel tzitzis. However, Hamishtachave lepishton notua. If a person bows down to pishton notua, to flax which has been which is planted, kosher tzitzis shahar nishtane, because by the time you make it into tzitzis, it's considered very changed from the what you bow down to. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Sif Kotzen Lamed Hey, Tzamra. So you bow down to a sheep or something, so the wool is posel for tzitzis. Says the Mishnah Berurah, after Dova Haneva the Eina Osel leKarban, because something which has been worshipped, Eina Osel leKarban, Ava leHejet Chari, but leHejet it's okay. So if you want to bow down to the sheep, then you can't use it as a carbon, but you want to eat it for lunch, or you want to use it to make a fur coat or a wool coat, that would be okay. Mikol Malcolm says in Mishnah Berurah, also the mitzvah tzitzis. It's also for the purpose of tzitzis. Because this is considered tzorech of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and mo'os klapi gavoya, and therefore it's considered disgraceful, disgusting to use this for a sacred purpose. Because there hasn't been a big shinui from the wool on the back of the animal to the tzitzis that you're now wearing. But it still looks like wool. But if you bow down to a field of flax, it's like a tree. And then later you make threads of tzitzis from it. The first appearance of the flax, of the wool in the field, is very different to what you have now. So there's two interesting notes on the side, two Igros Moshes. On number 50, it says, this whole problem, you bowing down to the sheep and not being able to use the wool for the mitzvah of tzitzis, is specifically talking about the chutzim, the actual strings of the tzitzis. But the actual beged, says Ramosha, even though you can't keep the mitzvah without the beged, the beged itself is the goyim for the mitzvah of the tzitzis. This is the actual mitzvah, the tzitzis. The beged is the hechatimsa to do the mitzvah. And therefore, says Ramosha, the prohibition referring to here is just on the tzitzis, but not on the beged itself. The next Ramosha, number 452, he says, in very interesting thing, you have a church, you have a Makam Avodah Zarah, a church, right, Rabbi Tugendaf Shul. Previously, it was a church. I don't know if that was actually a proper Avodah Zarah, but let's say it was. Yeah. So if you can you buy a church and transform into a shul? Says Ramosha, it's just like this halacha. Since the pishton is so distinct, it's so different from what you bow down to, therefore it's not a problem. So too, if you have the place and you totally renovate it, refurbish it, and it's now considered a shul, so therefore says Ramosha, it wouldn't be a problem. Okay, let's carry on the Mishnah Berurah Lamed Vav. Pasal Ayin B'Siman Tov Kuf Pei Vav. The Magen Avram Sif got involved. The Masik the Lefi Das HaMechaber Sham Hai Posel in Orach Lechatchila Mishum Demois. If you bow down to the sheep and you take the wool and you make tzitzis out of it, the strings out of it, it's mos. But Lechatchila you shouldn't do it. But the Eved, if you did do it, Yotza, you've been mekayim the mitzvah of tzitzis. V'chein Kosav Hagroba Simazed Din the Eved by Machleikas Shnuya. But the Eved, there is it's relevant to a Machleikas, a taught Machleikas, but Lechatchila one should avoid it, but Yevid, we said above, it's okay. The tzitzis, Kosav Eilas Tomid, that Semesh Shahoy Oleh B'Sashish Tachavoy Neseres. It's only the wool that was on the animal when you actually bow down to it. For Kolshkein Mashegod Lachkach, and Kolshkein, wool that grows subsequent to that. Or B'Seifa B'nei Chia Kosav Lehepech, he says the other way around. Demashe Gidl Achash Enevad Mutter, that which is grown after it was worshipped, that would be mutter. So there you have it. So what's on the animal, it's clearly osa. What grows later is a machlokus. There are two different opinions. Some say still osa, some say it's mutter. Not tuaf, flax which has been planted. Avala pishton shehu ne'ekar, but pishton which is detached. Oz nes afil hedge. Then it's a problem. It's dafka because it was harvested and cut, and then it's considered very different to the tzitzis you're wearing. But if it's bundles of flax which are detached from the ground, then it will be a problem. Kedin avodah zarah v'tikravta, like avodah zarah, and it's that which has been exchanged with ve'ena moya lo shinui, and shinui doesn't help over there. Shekol shata mahavim mimenu hari kamay. Whatever you've made it into is still considered like it. Okay, halacha test. Now, interesting and important halacha. Sif test says the Mishnah Berurah. What we're dealing with in this sif is where to put the strings of the tzitzis. So imagine you've got the tzitzis. We've all got a hole. So the Mishnah Berurah is going to talk about the opinions we have in Minhag Ashkenaz is to have one hole, right? In the Hasidic circles and other circles, they have two holes. But either way, it doesn't matter. What we're talking about is where do you put the hole? So what's going to come out from this sif is you can't put it too near the corner, but you can't put it too much inside the beged. So what this sif is talking about is where to place this hole. Says the Mechaber, Ya'aseh nekav ba'orach hatalis, lo lemala megimel etzbois. You shouldn't put it less than 3 etzbois. In brackets, it says hainu gudolim. So that means 3 thumb breadths. If you put the hole too far away from the edge, right? So here, imagine, right? Here's my 3 thumb breadths, so it takes you to about there. If you put it too far up, it's too far into the beged, so then it's not considered on the corner. So therefore, says the Mechaber, what's the shear? 3 etzbois, which is 3 thumb breadths. And so too, you shouldn't put it too near the corner. In other words, imagine you put, the way you work it out is, it's from the joint of the thumb until the top of the thumb. So you can't, can you see, look, this corner over here, you measure it from the joint of the thumb to the top of the thumb. It shouldn't be within that amount of the beged. If it's too low, too much near the end, how much? From the middle of the thumb, the joint, to the top of the nail, that's the minimum shear of where it can't be close to the corner. Again, and if it was too low down on the corner of the beged, on the edge of the beged, then it's considered not ala knaf but tachas knaf. And says the Ramah, and you measure this as a perpendicular, not as an angle. In other words, you measure the 3 fingers like that from the shear, going vertically, going up like that, and not on an angle, because then it's going to be less than 3 etzbois. It's going to be up 3 etzbois, it can't be further up than that, and it can't be within the goidel to the etzba, and you measure that as a vertical. Yeah? Okay, let's do the Mishnah Berurah on that. Sifkot and Tes. Yaseh, Kosovo Beis Yosef. Yesh Oimrim Diyaseh Beis Nekovim. There are those who say that you make 2 holes, like I mentioned earlier. Kamot Tzeirei, like the vow, the Tzeirei, which are 2 holes next to each other. V'yatel HaTzitzis B'sochim v'yotzes on l'tzad echad, and you pull them out into one side. Ein lochush lezeh. We don't have to worry about that. V'abola hachmal atzim b'chiyotzi lezeh. Eina min ha-machmirin. Someone who is machmir to do this is not being machmir me'atzmin. It looks like bewildering behavior. The mechsi kiyuaro, because it looks like arrogance. Ad kan l'shoinei. Ubach kosov the betalis cotton yaseh shtei nekovim. On a talis cotton you can, because if the whole concern is yuaro, is arrogance, on a talis cotton people don't see that. The bezel lo mechsik yura, given she'ein nira lakol, because it's not very visible as opposed to your talis kodl. V'chein kosov bekavonis she'arizal no akein, and they say in the Sefer Kavonis that is what the Arizal did. Omnom, interestingly, bebirkei Yosef kosov sheheid maharish. Maharish is Reb Shmuel Vital, who was the son of Reb Chaim Vital, who was the main Talmud of the Arizal. So the Maharash in Birkei Yosef, Reb Shmuel Vital writes, Shemoiri Harav Chaim Vital, that stands for his father, Aviv lo noakein. Even the main disciple of the Arizal, who was not noheg like this, did not do the 2 holes. And v'chein is pashta minhag b'minas Poland, and that is the prevalent minhag in Poland. Has been to do 1 hole. To do 2 holes. I mean, I'm not sure what that is. Over Ashkenaz, ein nagin kain, but the minhag in Ashkenaz is not to do that, and to do 1 hole, like I mentioned. V'nara nara poshte, and each let the rivers flow where they flow. In other words, each community should follow their own minhag, whatever it is. Orach. So it should be, we said, it shouldn't, the hole shouldn't be so far into the talus, more than 3 etzbois, 3 thumb breadths, we said. Ein lekamon b'mishnah bura, I'm now in Sif Cotton Mem. Ein lekamon b'mishnah bura, Sif Cotton on base, Mashikasav Nashom, Mem Aleph, lo lemala megimel. The lo mikri knafa beged el beged, because that's not on the corner of the beged, that's on the beged itself. V'atorah ksiv al kanfei bigdeihem. To have a gimel etzbois, su beged nikri v'lo knaf, that's called the beged and not the corner. V'alkein yesh li zoher la'aso sheyaschel ha'nekev toich gimel etzbois. You've got to be there very careful to start putting the hole in within 3 etzbois of the corner of the beged. Kosav Magen Avram. Im osa hanekev lemalo megimel. If you do the beged lemalo megimel, be higher, too far into the beged. Afal pisha kashakosha tzitzis osa chutin shel beged ketzorim. Even though when you tighten it, look. If you take a look at this, it's the best way to explain it. Can you see when you do it? You measure 3 etzbois, but by the time you wrap it, the beged shortens. Can you see it's pulled? So that you could argue, well, here now I measure it in its pulled state. It's less than 3 etzbois. But when you started off, maybe it was more than 3 etzbois. That's not a good answer. That's not a good argument. Says the Magen Avram. Where is it? V'ayim b'beis Yosef. Sorry. V'ayim b'beis Yosef. I've lost the place. Mem Aleph. Lo lemal megimel. D'lo mikra v'yed el beged. V'atorah kosva al kanfei bigdeihem. V'ayim b'beis Yosef shekosov. The gimel etzbois b'tzimtzum. When it's exactly 3 etzbois, mutar laharchik v'lasos ach kach hanechem sham. You can do the nekev there. V'hare poskim cholkim al zeh, and many poskim argue with sfirul the mekiven to have a gimel etzbois su beged mikri v'lo knaf. If it's exactly 3, then some argue. V'alkein yesh li zoy lasos sheyaschel hanekev toich gimel etzbois. It's important to start it within 3 tefachim. Kosav Magen Avram. Sorry, this is where we're up to. Im osa hanekev lemala migimel. If you do the hole above 3, afal pisha kashakosha tzitzis osa chutin shel beged ketzorim. The chutin pulls the corner of the beged to less than 3, and the folds of the corners fold up, and it becomes less than 3. Parcel. Because at the end of the day, even though it's pulled and it's crumpled a bit, it's still got a din of more than 3 etzbois. V'chein, and so too, so too, if you do it the other way around, look at this. If you've got the corner of the beged, we said the shear for the minimum size, it's got to be at least more than the joint to the top of the thumb, and it can't be less than that. But what if you did it like that, you did the hole above that, but then it crunches to less than that. So then it's kosher. It's all to do with where you began the hole, and we forget about the crunching. That's the rule.
Does it matter which side you start? So if you do it on which axis you start with?
What do you mean?
So you say if one side can't be further than 3 etzbois, that one has to be from the...
yeah, so...
Can you start, which way can you start?
Oh, I see, yeah, so it's got to be from both sides. Yeah, good point. Is that so if you look at that, if you look at the thing, it's 3 from that, it's within 3 from that side and within 3 from that side. It's on both sides.
So it's the same...
Yeah, because in other words, if you put it on there...
It's the same.
It's the same.
It's square.
Yeah, exactly, it's exactly. So no, it's not the same measurement. So it's got to be 3. It's got to be not more than 3 etzbois from both edges.
Yeah. So why do we have the joint measurements?
But there's
either way, it's got to be 3 etzbois.
Yeah. So it's saying what's the minimum, what's the maximum. So you've got the maximum is it can't be more than 3 etzbois from the edge on both sides, and on the minimum it can't be from the middle joint to the top of the thumb on both corners, on both sides. Yeah. Okay. Let's carry on. Just before the end of Mem Aleph, v'chein im osa hanekev lemala mekesha agudel v'alidei hakshir niskapel ha'beged ad shu pochus mekesha agudel kasha kim sheish ha'kolponim ashir ba'aknaf, like I just explained. Mem Beis hainu gudolin ein le'elsim and kotzen yudalet v'ayin ba'artz Chaim demasik lechatchila yositov limded ha'gimel etzbois ba'amok kmitza v'zeres. Rather than doing 3 thumb breadths, it's better to measure it with an amok kmitza and zeres. Amok kmitza and zeres is these 3 fingers. Amok kmitza zeres. And so, which basically is 3 etzbois as well. These three fingers. Yeah. Okay. Good. I just lost the place again. Okay, good. Mem gimel. Sivkat mem gimel. She'ena nikra konof. Ma'akiv afilu b'diavad. And if you don't do it in the right place, even b'diavad, it's no good. V'afilim la'achas also by tzitzis. V'afilu rak chulya. Even if you do one winding, achas chotach b'nekev sheyitro ha'tzitzis lemata. If you make a hole, you done it in the wrong place, and you make a little cut. Afilu hachi posel. You want to cut, you can't fix it. Once you've done one of the windings, imagine you do the hole in the wrong place, and you've done one of the windings. You say, "Oh boy, I've done the hole in the wrong place," and you cut it to readjust it. No good. Why? Ta'aseh v'lo minasui. You've got to do it in the right place and then build it onto that. You can't build it and then cut it into place. Right? Says the Mishnah Berurah Mem. Where Chotach b'nekev she'id la'tzitzis lemata. Afilu hachi pasum shem ta'aseh v'lo minasui. V'uad nibcha, and so to the reverse. K'shetolon teicha kesha agudel chotach lemala mebeged. You did it too low, and then you make an incision further into the beged. V'he'ele l'tzitzis lemala mekesha agudel, and then you bring the tzitzis further in, more than a kesha agudel, which is that shear from the middle joint to the top of the thumb, the tofa lamata, and you stitch it up with tola lamata mitalis al konof, harigam havigam kein ta'aseh v'lo minasui. You've still got a problem of ta'aseh v'lo minasui. Talis shel tzemek kashoyis mutzuyetz kilchasa. You've got a woolen talis, which is mutzuyetz kilchasa, which is properly got the tzitzis on. V'nimsa begodel shel meshi, and you've got on the tassels in the corner some silk. She'oisim bisfas ha'elyon hatalis chutin shel pishton. You've got a problem of shatness in the tassels. You can imagine what I mean. And these tassels, these tassels, you realize you've got some pishton, and you've got this made of wool, so you've got a problem of tzecheles. And you've got to take away the tassels. The best thing to do is to undo the tzitzis and to reapply them, put them on once you've removed the tassels. If you do it too near the edge, it's b'diavad, it's no good. Even b'diavad, it's no good. You shouldn't do it too much. You shouldn't do it. It should be somewhere in between. Okay, memhei mikashir pasha de gamkein misharin ba'odin benani. Whose thumbs do you use? The average size thumbs. Last you've got in memvav adat tziperin makum hashava lebasa, which means that the top of the nail when it hits the flesh. Sorry, one more you've got in b'yosher. You do it vertically, like I said. Pirush misfas habeged moedin b'yosher gimel etzbois v'chein hashir de kesher gudel. Both of those shiurim you measure vertically. Bein ba'erich bein b'reichav. There you go. Bein b'reichav, so basically horizontally and vertically on both corners. Kadilakam b'soif sifyud. Ve'ein moedin hashrim ba'alachson. You don't measure on an angle, a diagonal. Sha'ali de'alachson memsmayat hamadid le'erich beis chumashim. Because if you, just to do the maths, we did this, Chaim. If you do it, if you've got a square of 1 by 1, the perpendicular, not the perpendicular, the hypotenuse, the diagonal is going to be 1.4. That's what it's saying, and therefore that's going to skew the measurements. So we're talking about vertical and horizontal measurements, as we said. Okay, Peseda.